Hey folks, my name is Will Hamilton. I'm a PTR certified professional tennis coach, and welcome to the Fuzzy Yellow Balls free email course. Over the next few days, you are going to learn what it takes to hit a high level forehand. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the pros. We're going to look at Federer, Nadal, Ivanovic, Hontakova. We're going to look at all their forehands because we want to know what all their forehands have in common. What are they all doing the same? Well, it turns out they're doing 5 things the same, and we call these things the fundamentals, the 5 fundamentals of the forehand. Then we're going to look at the forehands of some real-life club-level players, weekend warriors, folks just like you, and what we're going to see is that the difference between Roger Federer's forehand and Kevin, the club player's forehand, is not in the small details. It's not that Roger does something differently with his wrist or that his backswing is a little bit different. What separates Roger from our amateurs is the big stuff, these 5 fundamentals. Roger and every other pro we're about to show you does these 5 fundamentals, and they do them extremely well every single time they hit a forehand, and amateur players do not. Now, you probably recognize this guy standing behind me. This is Roger Federer, and he probably has the best forehand ever. But Roger's forehand and every other pro's forehand on tour contains 5 elements. So let's walk through what these 5 elements are. To start, right now we have Roger waiting for the tennis ball, and he is going to execute the first fundamental, which is called the pivot and the shoulder turn. It's alternatively called the unit turn. And if we watch it real quick, this is basically where he just gets his body sideways. He starts to turn sideways. Now, if we play it again, he is going to pivot with his outside foot, his right foot, since he is right-handed, and his shoulders are going to turn sideways. And again, he's begun to get himself sideways and face the side fence. Now, a very important concept to understand with the pivot and the shoulder turn is that it starts the racket take back because your shoulders are turning sideways and not because you're using your arms to move the racket side to side. In fact, both hands are still on the tennis racket right now. So let's watch it again. The shoulders turn sideways, the racket starts to come back, but both hands are just along for the ride right now. They're not doing anything. Both hands are on the tennis racket. Now Roger's ready to execute the second fundamental, which is to take the racket all the way back. So here we have him at the completion of the pivot and the shoulder turn. And to start, he's going to let go of the tennis racket with his non-hitting hand. Once he does that, he can use his hitting arm to get the racket all the way back. Now, you can also see that as he brings the racket back, he's going to extend his non-hitting arm out across his body, about shoulder high, and more or less in line with the baseline, and that's going to help him judge the oncoming tennis ball. Now, if we go back to the completion of the pivot and the shoulder turn, you'll notice that as he takes the racket back, he's taken a couple steps to get to the tennis ball. But the key thing to take away is that once he's got the racket back and his non-hitting arm extended out, he is going to have all of his weight loaded up on his outside leg. And this position he is in right now, that is the completion of his preparation. And this body position is going to allow him to swing forward correctly in the next step. The third fundamental that Roger's going to do is swing forward to his contact point. And to do that correctly, he has to do 3 things all at the same time. And we're going to talk through each one of these elements individually. We've got Roger at the completion of his preparation. And right now, we're only going to focus on his feet. We're going to ignore everything else. Now, remember, at the completion of his preparation, all the weight is loaded up on that outside leg. And as he begins to swing, he's going to push off that leg. That's pretty simple. Weight's loaded up on the foot, and he just pushes off it as he swings. The second thing we're going to focus on is his upper body. Now, he is sideways at the completion of his preparation, but as he swings forward, his body rotates back towards the net. So at his contact point, he is more or less facing the net. The third thing Roger's going to do, here we are at the completion of the preparation again, is swing with his tennis racket and hitting arm. We're only going to focus on that. And as he swings, the racket drops down and then swings forward. And if he was tracing out a line with his tennis racket, it would look like the letter C. So let's go back to the completion of his preparation and watch this whole thing. And you can see that he's doing these three things all at the same time to get to his contact point, which is a little bit out in front of his body, and the strings are flat on the back of the tennis ball. The fourth fundamental is the follow-through, and that allows Roger to decelerate himself and the tennis racket smoothly. From contact, let's focus on Roger's upper body to start. And Roger's going to continue to rotate after he's made contact with the tennis ball, and that lets him slow his body down during the follow-through. Going back to contact, now let's focus on the tennis racket. And Roger extends out in the direction that he's hitting the ball, and then he turns his forearm and his wrist over as one piece, like he has a watch on and he's trying to check the time, and he brings his arm and tennis racket across his body in a smooth and relaxed motion. Going back to contact, let's watch the whole motion, and you can see that by doing this, by executing this fourth fundamental, Roger is able to slow himself and the racket down smoothly. So the stroke's over. Where's this fifth fundamental I was talking about? Well, the fifth fundamental has to do with the swing path. The path the racket travels along from the start of the motion through contact and into the follow-through. And here's what's fundamental about the swing path. Let's go to the completion of the pivot and the shoulder turn. Here we've got Roger again. Both hands are still on the tennis racket. Well, when Roger lets go of the tennis racket with his left hand, his non-hitting hand, the racket is not allowed to stop moving. He has to keep it moving over the course of the backswing and into the follow-through. So let's see what that looks like. He lets go, and the swing path is continuous. That's the word we want to focus on. He has a continuous swing path. Racket doesn't stop moving through contact and into the follow-through. And it's very important to highlight this because those first four fundamentals, well, we kind of broke them up, so it might have looked like his stroke was segmented: pivot and shoulder turn, racket back, drop down, swing to contact, follow through. But when it's actually in practice, let's watch it again. His racket doesn't stop moving once he releases it with his non-hitting, his left hand. So we've just seen that you can boil down Roger Federer's forehand to 5 fundamentals. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, Will, that's a little simplistic, reducing a professional level forehand down to just 5 fundamentals, 5 elements. Well, tomorrow we are going to prove it to you by looking at some other pros. We're going to look at both guys and gals, folks like Roddick, Verdasco, Nadal, Del Potro, Safina, Ivanovic, Hantakova, and so on. And you are going to see that all those pros do these 5 fundamentals, and they do them extremely well each and every time they hit a forehand.